Welcome to Son of a Glitch. Join us as we explore some of the internet's craziest glitch stories. Story 1. I'm 22 now, but this incident has stayed with me so clearly that I remember it better than most things in my life. This happened when I was around 17. I wasn't intoxicated or dreaming. I was completely aware and conscious during the whole event. I had gone to visit my aunt's house with my mom. She lives in an old government apartment building, the kind that has 5 to 6 floors with identical and old concrete walls and staircases. Her flat was on the 3rd floor. At one point, I decided to go downstairs to watch newborn puppies. After watching them when I started climbing back up, I remember passing floor after floor, but nothing looked familiar. There were no markings or floor numbers, even no apartment gates. Just the same repeating walls and stairs. It felt like I had climbed a lot more than just 3 floors. And then suddenly, I reached the top of the staircase and everything changed. Instead of the usual floor and doors, I saw what looked like a school corridor, not the school corridor we have in Indian high schools. A long hallway lined with lockers, just like the ones you see in American high school movies. It was brightly lit and completely unfamiliar. And there were kids inside who felt like they were not Indian, going about like it was totally normal. I just stood there on the staircase, shocked, staring, wondering what are these kids doing here, and why this old building has something that looks so clean and good. I remember very clearly, a young black girl looked at me from inside the corridor and waved or said hi. She smiled like I was supposed to be there. I didn't respond. I was frozen. Then I slowly turned around and walked back down the stairs. As I climbed down, the same old staircase returned, the usual old walls and layout. And as soon as I passed one more level down, I was suddenly at the familiar 3rd floor again. Everything was normal. Out of confusion, I went back up again, and this time it was just the 4th floor apartment. No corridor. No lockers. No students. No black girl that waved at me. I even asked my aunt later if there was any school nearby, or if the building had any sort of renovated section. She had no idea what I was talking about and said there was nothing like that. She assumed I was daydreaming. But I know I wasn't. This wasn't a dream. It felt way too real. The lighting, the walls, the girl, the way she noticed me, all of it was vivid. I still remember every detail. I've had dreams. I've had hallucinations. This was not one of them. This felt like I slipped into another version of reality for a few minutes. I have no explanation for it. But it happened, and I haven't forgotten it ever since. Didn't have courage to discuss this with someone before they declare me crazy. Was this a time slip, a dimension bleed, a liminal space event, or something else? If anyone's experienced anything like this, please reply. I'm not crazy, I'm a working man. Story 2. In 2012, my husband, at that time we were separated but sharing custody of our daughter, got diagnosed with celiac disease by having endoscopy and biopsy. For those that don't know, CD is an autoimmune disease that eats away at your intestinal villi if you ingest wheat, and to treat it, you have to be on a strict gluten-free diet. It's hereditary, so you can't get it without the gene. He had to change his entire lifestyle to make sure all foods we were eating were certified gluten-free. At the time my daughter also was showing symptoms, and based on his diagnosis, we put her on a gluten-free sitter as well. This put a psychological toll on her, as she often had to be left out of having treats at school and cake at parties, and I had to make and bring all her food everywhere. She was formally diagnosed a few years ago by endoscopy and biopsy after gluten trial as well. Fast forward a few years and my husband began having nutrient deficiency. I told him to visit his GI because of his eating hidden gluten. It can fry your intestines' ability to absorb nutrients. Here's where it gets interesting. Since they found no record of his celiac diagnosis, which was done by his former DR who is now dead, they made him repeat the gluten trial and endoscopy. When his results came back, it was negative for celiac. Now I argued they messed up and missed it in the biopsy because that is possible, and how the hell would our daughter have CD if he doesn't? And because of his former diagnosis that had gone missing. So he drives around San Francisco to all his former DR offices. All are now closed. His DR who died, the office across from him, all gone. He finally finds out how to retrieve a copy from the deceased DR's records, and guess what? The original test was negative for celiac. What the actual? Prior to that diagnosis, he didn't even know what celiac disease was. When he was diagnosed, he had to go through a massive education about it and change his whole lifestyle to be gluten-free. Our daughter has it. Which, like I said, it's hereditary, so that means either I have it, and am the only one in my family that has ever had it and am completely asymptomatic, or, I don't even know. I am so baffled, and my poor daughter, she always feels outcast due to having CD, and always being the one left out of sharing food and company with people outside our gluten-free home. This has to be some sort of glitch where in this universe, the results of the original test were negative instead of positive. Now I don't know what to do with my daughter. Do I retest her and see if hers disappeared as well? A whole freaking disease disappeared. This is insane. Story 3. This has happened twice now. This time it really freaked me out. The first time, I walked into the gas station, and I picked up a cherry-flavored Alani Nu. I paid and walked out with my drink in a bag. When I got home and took my drink out, it was the peach-flavored one. I was so confused because I knew for a fact I grabbed the cherry one, but I chalked it up to maybe I was looking at the cherry and accidentally grabbed the peach. The second time, a week later, which was today, I went into the same gas station with my husband, and we both picked out Alani Nu flavors. I picked up the watermelon, and he picked up the peach. I saw him pick up the peach, and I saw both flavors on the counter when we checked out. Remembering the first time, I thought to check. We pay and leave with the drinks in a bag. When we get home, I go to take out the drinks to put them in their fridge, and they are both watermelon. My husband was shocked too, because we both saw that he grabbed the peach one. I don't know what is going on, but it definitely feels like some sort of glitch. Story 4. Many years ago I was visiting my friends in another country, Denmark, because they were getting married. I was joined by my mother and her partner. I had to buy a dress for the occasion, so a few days before the wedding the three of us went shopping on Straget in København. I was really optimistic about finding a dress, but it turned out that most of the shops only had stuff that I didn't like. The colors that were in fashion that summer were rather dull emo. It started to rain a lot, and we had been walking around for hours, but I finally noticed a store that I had always liked a lot. It's a chain, and me and my mom went in there, while her partner smoked a cigarette under a little vestibule outside of the store. It barely shielded him from the rain, but he was happy to be able to finally have a smoke while we looked around inside. He smoked a lot. I will never forget what we saw inside. The store was full of people, but also the clothes were beautiful. They were almost exclusively in colors that I like, lots of purple dresses in all shapes and sizes and skirts that had patterns from gold, purple, and whatnot. I said to my mom that this was definitely what I needed, and I would be buying lots of things, not just one dress, and she agreed. Even though this shop was mostly for younger women, she saw things that she wanted. We both had wet hair and clothes from the rain, so we decided to come back again the day after and go straight to this store, because we didn't want to be trying stuff on while wet, and we wanted to have lots of time and not leave her partner standing outside for long. Also, this store, unlike the others we had been to that day, was full of people. It was on 2 floors, and we could only see the stairs leading to the top floor and glimpsed a tiny bit of what was up there, but judging from what was downstairs, we were sure it would be just as great. So we left, went straight home, and I was giddy with excitement about the next day. I don't like buying clothes for myself, and this is the only time I have ever been giddy about clothes shopping. Now on to the next day. We go straight to this store. It was a bit of a walk from the bus stop, but right away I noticed something was off. It had the same sign outside, so it was definitely the same place. A drugstore I had visited before going in there was still across the street, but there were some things that didn't look the same. I shook off the feeling and went in, really excited as was my mom, but inside the store there was nothing but the same dull stuff that was in every other shop that year. Boring colors, etc. And it looked completely different in every way. I remember my mom's disappointment. She ran up to the woman working there and asked if they had changed everything overnight. She was like, "No, we only bring in new stuff once a week." There was no second floor either. Literally nothing looked the same inside. We had to face facts that we weren't going to be seeing any of those beautiful clothes again. One other thing we noticed after coming back out was that the vestibule that my mom's partner had stood under while smoking in the rain wasn't there anymore. I have often wondered about this, and me and my mom used to talk about it a lot, and she was sad about it for years. She's really into clothes. It's probably the only time me and her bonded over clothes. And I wonder what would have happened if we had bought anything there. And is stuff like this possibly happening more than we think? I've only ever heard one similar story where a guy working in Iran went to a really nice diner in a mountain village that was on the 2nd floor over a gas station. Everyone he worked with said he was making it up because it made no sense that a fancy diner would be operating in such a remote place, but he took them there one day, really excited to show them that he was right, and then when they get to this particular village, which looked the same as most others in the area, everything looks just as he remembers. The same gas station is there, but there is no second floor. He remembered it being the best dinner he had ever had, and so cheap that he couldn't believe it. I can still vividly remember the interior of the store and the beautiful clothes I saw that day. I would describe them as dreamy. Another thing that made this store different from all the others was that it was full of people. There are lots of clothing stores on Straget, and none of them had been particularly busy that day. Far from it even. Then why would this one have been so crowded and full? Anyway, this is one of the strangest things that has happened to me. I was making a list of stuff like this while watching the TV show Dark with my husband. He thinks strange stuff is always happening to me, but he agreed that this was probably the strangest, and the fact that my mother experienced it too, and her partner who doesn't believe in anything supernatural, makes it impossible to deny. Story 5. This experience will be written from the perspective of my mum. Back in 2021, when I was 41, I was admitted to Wiston Hospital in the northwest of England with sepsis. It turned out I had an MSSA blood infection and a heart infection called endocarditis. I stayed in the hospital for 6 weeks while the antibiotics did their job. Thankfully, I recovered, but something happened during that stay that I still can't explain. Wiston Hospital has been around for a long time. The old building had this 19th century look before it was rebuilt in 2010. To clarify ahead of time, the old build was knocked down, and the new one was built in its place. The new build feels modern and clinical, nothing like the older structure. While I was there, I had a bit of a routine. I'd leave my ward, take the elevator down, go outside for a cigarette, and then come back the same way. It was quiet at night, and I didn't think much of it, until one night, everything changed. That night, after my usual cigarette break, I got into the elevator and pressed the button for my floor. Instead of going up, it began to descend. I thought it was just a malfunction, and planned to press the button again once it stopped. When the doors opened, the vibe immediately felt off. The hallway didn't look like the hospital I was used to. It was darker, emptier, and just wrong. The walls looked older, like something from decades ago, and there wasn't a single person in sight. I don't know why, but I stepped out to look around, even though I had this strong gut feeling that I shouldn't. To my left, I saw a doorway with a sign above it that said accident and emergency. That didn't make any sense. Annie was supposed to be above me, not below. I kept walking, and the further I went, the stranger it got. The air felt heavy, and everything was eerily silent. Then I saw the beds. They had these old metal frames with thin blue mattresses, the kind you'd expect to see in an old hospital, not a modern one. The further I walked, the darker it got, and I started feeling like I was being watched. I panicked, turned around, and ran back to the elevator. When I pressed the button for my floor again, it thankfully took me back up. After that, I avoided using that elevator whenever I could. I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen, but I tried to convince myself it was exhaustion or maybe a strange part of the hospital I didn't know about. About a week later, I needed to use the elevator late at night. I hesitated but pressed the button to call it. When it arrived, I froze. Instead of showing a floor number at the top like usual, it just displayed the letter X. I noped out of there immediately. I don't know if that's standard behavior for a malfunction or some kind of error code, but I wasn't about to find out. Even now, I don't know what to make of the whole thing. I've heard people talk about time slips and stuff, but I don't know if that's what I experienced. All I know is that it felt wrong, and it's something I'll never forget. Story 6. About 4 months ago, my mom had knee replacement surgery, and they sent her home the next day. After 3 days her leg was kinda red and significantly more swollen. She also had a fever, so we decided to go back to the hospital. This was around 10 p.m., and it was dark. I was driving, Mom was in the passenger seat, my 12-year-old daughter was in the back middle seat. We live in a very rural area, and after about 10 miles we hadn't met one single other vehicle. It's that rural. LOL. Along this stretch of highway there are a few really tight curves that have a 30 miles per hour reduced speed limit sign. No flashing lights or anything else, just a yellow metal sign. There's a creek on one side and a steep cliff on the other, so no shoulder, no driveways, nowhere for another car to be besides on the road, as we were. After the first curve, all of a sudden we see a bright blue light flash through the car. I saw it on the trees in front of me, and behind me when I looked in the door mirror, then it was gone. Like cop lights, but without any red or headlights behind us. Just for 1 second. No sound. No other cars in front or behind us. And we're only going 30 miles per hour. All three of us saw it. The exact same thing. It really freaked me out because I'm a very logical, rational person, and I can say this is the only experience I've had my whole life that I can't explain. Also, there are 2 wooden crosses beside the road where a tractor-trailer crashed and 2 people died in that spot. I remember that accident because it tore up the highway where the semi jackknifed, and that section had to be repaved. I don't believe in ghosts or aliens or anything like that, and if my mom and daughter hadn't seen this too, I would have convinced myself I was seeing things and probably never even mentioned it to anyone. So my theory is, we drove through a glitch in the Matrix and saw the emergency lights from that accident years ago. As crazy as that seems, it makes as much sense as anything else I can think of. What do you guys think? Has this happened to anyone else? Story 7. I think this is the right place for this, although it has some crossover with other slightly paranormal experiences we've had in our house. Last night my wife and I were going to sleep, a few minutes past midnight. We have no kids, no pets, we are the only people in the house. We had washed our bed sheets and duvet earlier in the evening, and had put the fresh bedding on right before bed. My wife has a stuffed animal possum from when she was younger, named Pud and Pop. He usually is just plopped down at the end of the bed, or sometimes down on the floor when he rolls off the bed. Occasionally she'll cuddle up with it when we're going to sleep. While falling asleep we're laying there talking. I'm spooning her with my arm over her, with my arm and head the only parts of my body outside of the covers. As our conversation is trailing off as we're getting sleepy, I say something like, "Where's Pud and Pop? Did we put him back on the bed after making it?" She just responds she isn't sure, and then we're quiet for a few minutes. Maybe 3 minutes go by and Pud and Pop suddenly lands on my arm, which is slung over my wife, as we're all cuddled up. He's stuffed with the material inside Beanie Babies, and he makes the distinct plop sound like if you were to drop a Beanie Baby down on a table. A very audible sound. Our eyes both shoot open immediately. "Did you just drop Pud and Pop down on me somehow?" "No, how could I have?" she responds. She was completely under the covers other than her head. She is immediately freaked out. The stuffed animal came down me hard enough for her to feel it through the covers, and to jolt us both up. We have no bedside table by the bed, nothing at all that he could have fallen off. Our bed is essentially just against the wall, in the middle of the room. I have no real explanation of where he came from, how he just dropped down on top of us, or anything. Very bizarre, and I found it very hard to fall asleep for the next hour. Story 8. I'm from Rio, Brazil, and I was on the subway going from São Conrado to Jardim Oceânico. For context, anyone who rides the metro here knows that stretch is long, probably the longest one on line 4. The distance takes approximately 5 minutes to cover. It was a Sunday, and there were maybe 6 other people in my car. We went into the tunnel, and as usual, it was taking a while. 5 minutes go by. Then 10:15. I started thinking it was weird, because by that point we should have been out of the tunnel and riding above ground. That part has an insane ocean view, by the way. I looked back and this older lady, clearly nervous, said, "Wow, it's taking a while, isn't it?" I agreed. I looked around. The other passengers were already standing, peeking through the doors to try and see something. I decided to time it on my phone. Another 5-6 minutes pass. A young woman started to panic. The thing is, the train was flying like crazy fast, but we never arrived. And the feeling in the air wasn't the usual, "Oh great, a delay" kind of annoyance. It was something else, something strange. I remember thinking, wait, did we die? Is this some kind of limbo or purgatory? Because there's no way. My heart was racing. The girl on the bench started crying. The older man near the door pressed the emergency intercom button, but there was no response at all. Then suddenly a light at the end of the tunnel. Everyone looked at each other like what the actual hell just happened. The train pulled into the station, and everyone just started laughing. In my head, I called us the Jokers. I've been through scary stuff before, real life-threatening situations, but nothing, absolutely nothing, has ever matched that feeling. I still can't explain what the hell happened, but I'm pretty sure it was some kind of collective hysteria. Story 9. So this happened some 6 or so years ago, maybe 8 at most. At the time, I worked pretty far from home, a couple towns over far from home. Why work so far from home? They were hiring, and it was the only job I was able to secure that used my degree and paid more than stocking shelves at Sam's Club. Side note, fuck Sam's Club. Once I got off the highway, my commute took me through several school zones, so if I left home too late, my commute, with tollway and highway combined, went from 45-ish minutes to an hour and 30 minutes at the absolute least. So, in order to get to work on time, I'd leave at ungodly in the morning and get there way too goddamn early, purely so I wouldn't be stuck in school zone hell. Background set, here's the glitch moment. It was a morning like any other, the sun isn't out yet. I just got off the highway, stopped at the red light. It's way too fucking early in the morning for anyone with a choice to be out of bed. I don't listen to the radio and the cassette adapter. I used to listen to stuff from my phone on the car's speakers. Yes, I'm old, and the car is older than some people I know. Sue me. Is on the fritz, so I'm not listening to what little music I listen to, or to whatever audiobook holds my fancy. I'm sitting there at the red light, thinking about nothing. There are no other cars on the road. The only lights are the street lights, several of which are flickering, a few of which are out. No noise but the sound of my car idling. The light turns green. I looked right, the street was empty. I looked left, nothing. I looked forward, and didn't take my foot off the brake. I waited a few seconds and, I genuinely don't remember if I said this out loud or merely thought it. I said, I wonder why I'm not driving? At that exact moment, a muscle car roars through the to-it, red light at Mach fuckaduck. Its tires squeal like pigs on fire as it makes a turn somewhere to my left, the sound of the car quickly fading. I sat there and again, not sure if out loud or thought to myself, said, that's why. I then put my foot on the gas and sedately took off. I drive like an old man because cars are expensive and money is tight. Sue me, counting the seconds for how long it would have taken me to get to the spot where Mr. Late for something would have hit me. And it was the exact length of time it took for the light to turn green, for me to look to the sides, and for the car to fly through the red light. I then went to work, and later realized I almost died, or would have landed on so much medical debt that I'd probably have been better off dying. Yeah, that's it. Believe me or don't. People lie on the internet. Either way, have a good day and drive safe. Story 10. I was telling a friend about this experience, and they directed me here to share it. In November 2019, before anyone knew about COVID-19 in the UK, both me and my fiancé had it. We didn't know what it was until months later, though. COVID hit my fiancé worse than me, and all she wanted to eat was pastry. I was actually able to get out of bed, so while I still felt like death, I felt like a walk to the store was still doable for me, especially as I could get the bus home. The walk from the house to the store would take 35 minutes on a good day. I'm chronically ill with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. I promise these small details are important. The walk to the store took me a little longer as I had to keep stopping to hack up a lung and catch my breath. I acquired the pastries and some sore throat medication before making my way to the bus station beside the store and finding the buses weren't running properly because so many drivers were off sick due to whatever this virus was that was going around. We didn't know anything about COVID-19 until around February 2020. So I text my fiancé right as I start walking from the bus station that I'm on my way, but walking so I'll be back when I'm back. She replied almost immediately with an okay, and to take my time. I put in my headphones and started my music, which I remember distinctly was a 10-minute song, and began walking. I remember reaching the edge of the store building and turning a corner, and then I remember walking up the garden path and opening the front door to the house. My fiancée had come downstairs to get a drink and was extremely confused as she saw me. She told me to check the time on the message I had sent. The message I had sent her to say I was on my way home had been sent 6 minutes previous. There is physically no way I could have made it home. An easy 3 kilometers walk. We play Pokemon Go, so we knew roughly the distance, in 6 minutes. Even if I ran, there is no way it could have happened. I was also still only halfway through the song that was playing when I set off. I wasn't particularly out of breath. I didn't have a coughing fit upon arrival home, and that walk back always brought me out in a sweat, but I wasn't sweating. The only explanation I can come up with is that I teleported somehow. Anyone have any thoughts? Story 11. I have experienced a few glitches, but this is by far the most dramatic. I did some growing up outside of Phoenix in a small town 2 hours south. I loathed living there, and between that and my girlfriend leaving I had too much and decided to literally pick up and go. This was 2002. Everything I owned was thrown into garbage bags and tossed into my truck. I emptied my whole apartment and packed within a few hours. By 9 p.m. I was on the road to Phoenix. I need to elaborate on the journey. The drive, if one isn't speeding, is about 2.5 hours, and it's a trip I had made so often I could practically close my eyes and make it. It's a boring drive up out of a valley the town is in, down the other side of a mountain, and finally, coasting 2 hours one way through flat, desolate desert. It got weird real damn fast. I gassed up, got through town real quick, and started up the mountain pass. I was real 19 and real excited. Once you got up on the mountain, it was kinda like a hello to all the country in front of you and goodbye to everything behind. I sailed down the mountain and proceeded onto Act 2, which was the long, boring part. I had a tape player in my old truck, and I was maxing volume on the Ramones tape and keeping watch of the green highway signs that told you how many miles the towns in front and behind are. That was the way I always battled highway hypnosis. The first sign read something like, Phoenix 170 miles. Another small chunk of time passed into the night before I saw another sign, Phoenix 155 miles. When my high beams revealed the next one, it was a little sooner, Phoenix 143 miles. But I swear the next sign that rendered out of the dark desert was the town I'm from. For the purpose of this, we'll call it Town X 30 miles. I couldn't understand why it would show the town behind me on a 2-lane, one-way highway. The next sign said, Town X 25 miles. WTF. When the next sign came up and said Town X 15 miles, I didn't hesitate. I just had a really, really bad feeling, so I yanked my steering wheel left. I drove over the shoulder and into pure desert median. The jostling shook me until I was able to complete my giant U-turn landing on the other 2 lanes and hauling ass. 2 hours later I was in Phoenix. Doesn't make any sense. Only thing I can think is maybe I turned off the highway and drove around onto the other lanes. But anyone who has driven through the desert will tell you just how impossible it is to complete that without noticing. Story 12. This happened about 12 years ago when I was around 17, and my little sister was about 7 or 8. She doesn't remember much of it, but I do, mainly because I think about it so often. It's one of those experiences that I can't explain, and for someone as skeptical as me, that's very unsettling. It was summer vacation, and I was babysitting my little sister while both my parents were at work. I have another sister, 2 years younger than me, but she wasn't home on that particular day. We lived on the second floor of an old Chicago townhouse, with a front entrance and a back porch that led directly into the kitchen. That day, my little sister and I were both in the living room, me watching TV, and her playing some computer game. She was losing and let out a curse word, which, at the time, she was starting to do more often. She was usually a very well-behaved kid, but my parents were trying to break the habit by putting her in timeout whenever they caught her swearing. So following their rule, I sent her to sit in the kitchen for 5 minutes. I kept watching TV, completely losing track of time. It wasn't until my show ended that I realized over 40 minutes had gone by. I felt awful as I rushed to the kitchen, ready to apologize for leaving her in there so long. But just as I got close, I heard something I really didn't expect. I heard whistling. It was strange for 2 reasons. First, I had never heard my little sister whistle before, and second, this wasn't just random whistling, it was a tune. A deliberate, steady melody. At first, I felt even worse, thinking I had left her there alone so long that she had managed to teach herself how to whistle. But as I stood there, listening, something started to feel off. The sound didn't seem like it was coming from my sister at all. It sounded older, deeper, familiar in a way. It sounded exactly like my dad. My dad did usually come in through the back door when he got home from work, so for a split second, I thought maybe he had gotten home early. But that didn't make sense. He wasn't due back for at least another 3 or 4 hours. Still, the resemblance was uncanny. The pitch, the rhythm, the way the notes lingered for just a second too long. It was his whistle. I started walking slower and started to get annoyed because I knew once my sister told him how long I'd left her alone in there for I'd probably be in trouble. I slowly poked my head in expecting to see both of them, but instead, I found my sister, alone and completely knocked out, head resting on her arms, fast asleep. But the whistling was still going on. The sound was right there, filling the room. It wasn't coming from my sister. It wasn't coming from outside. It was just there. I don't remember how long I stood there listening, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. Eventually, I ran to the back door, yanking it open, expecting to see someone standing outside. No one was there. I ran to the windows, looking down, looking around. Nothing. But the entire time, that damn whistling never stopped. It was still in the kitchen, even as I stepped out onto the porch, even as I backed away. It wasn't following me, it was staying in the room, right where I had left my sleeping sister. I panicked. I grabbed my sister, barely waking her up as I carried her out of the house, and ran straight to my friend's place down the street. I waited there until my mom got home. When I told her what had happened, she brushed it off. She barely reacted, didn't seem to care, and honestly, that made me feel even crazier. So I just stopped talking about it. I never told my dad or my other sister. But here's the part that still makes my stomach drop whenever I think about it. A few days later, when my dad did come home from work, he walked in through the back door, and he was whistling the exact same tune I had heard in the kitchen days before. The exact same one. I don't have an explanation. I've thought about every possible logical answer, but nothing fits. It wasn't an echo, it wasn't someone outside, and it definitely wasn't my sister. I've never told anyone this story since, but I still think about it all the time.